Hello, and here we are again doing another video tutorial on Farming Simulator and Gaints Editor. And today what we're going to have a look at is how to create, join and edit fields in the map that you want to change, or perhaps you're making a map and you want to know how to make a field and put it into your map or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use North Brabant for this, specifically because it's a flat map and it has some rather large fields which are separated by ditches. So I'm going to show you how to basically create the extra parts of the field, change fields from, in this particular case, grass to the actual field that you can then cultivate, plough, seed, etc. So what we'll do is we'll just start off by opening up our map, North Brabant. This will work for any map, doesn't necessarily have to be this one, but I've just chosen this one specifically because it will be easier to work with. Some of the fields on some of the mod maps where they're multi-angled and all this other stuff will be a little bit trickier to work with, but you'll get the gist of it. So we'll proceed. So we've opened this up and you can see here what we've got is 1, 2, 3, 4 fields. There is a fifth one here, and this one over in the corner has all got trees. But what I want to do, I want to keep one of the fields as grass, but what I want to do here is join the fields, sorry that's the water plane, this field, this field, this field and this field together to make one large field. You might want to do this, I've done it in the past, so that I can have a really large area that I can then do corn chaff, for example. Yeah, so what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to get rid of the grass textures, not the actual ground textures. We want to leave the grass ground texture there, so that if in the future you do decide to change it or plant grass, if you were to actually put like a dirt texture under here instead of a grass texture, when you then try to put grass down, it would actually come up with a ground texture as dirt, not grass. So if you ever want to create a field that you then may in the future want to change to grass, you must make sure that you actually put that grass texture underneath the map, or underneath the field that you've created, sorry, because otherwise it won't work properly. I've played around with some maps that the creator, for whatever reason, and that's their choice, have left a dirt texture, or perhaps maybe concrete or asphalt or something like that underneath, and then put the field, created the field on top of it, and then when you go to change the field to a crop, from a crop field to a grass field, you end up then getting a mismatch, because what happens is the engine doesn't recognise the correct ground texture, and it then puts down tarmac or asphalt or whatever else, but not grass, so it won't grow properly, and obviously it'll look silly. So I would recommend to leave the actual grass ground texture on there, so that you have that possibility in the future. So what we'll do is we'll just go in here, and this can take some time, because you know, it depends on how you want it to look, but if you want it to look, you know, neat and tidy and all the rest of it, then you know, you need to spend a bit of time actually working with these textures, the grass texture in this case, and square it off. I mean, if you're looking to create perhaps maybe round fields, or you know, not necessarily complete square fields, then you may want it to be a little bit more artistic, if you like. But in this case we've got rectangular fields, but we're going to make one big rectangular field, so I want to try and get it as squared off as possible. So we'll just go ahead with our terrain editing tool here, and we'll go down to the foliage layer painting, and we'll select grass. Now it depends on, again, your preference. I sometimes, depending on the map layout, will switch from the round brush type to the square brush type, and if we then click on our terrain foliage painting mode tool in the top here, you can see I've got this nice big square box, which you can adjust either by the slider here, or once you click in the area of the field you can then scroll with your mouse wheel and change it there, whichever you prefer to do. You know, you can play around with the opacity, the hardness and so forth over here, but for most things I would leave them somewhere around abouts in the middle, and just play around with that as you see fit, whatever works for you best. So with the right mouse button, what I'm going to do is just click here to remove that grass texture, not the ground texture but the actual grass foliage texture. And because the actual field texture is an info, not a texture, well, it is a texture, but it works in a different way. So you won't actually remove that by clicking on it with this particular setup. If you were to have perhaps maybe wheat in this field and then you were removing grass, if you were to accidentally move your cursor across into the wheat, you would actually remove the wheat as well, even though you've actually only got grass selected over here, and vice versa, because it's the way that the engine works to remove those particular textures. So you can make this box as big as you want it to be. You could go all the way up to the maximum size and do it, just click and drag on your left mouse button to remove that texture in sort of one foul swoop, like so. As we can see, it's removed all of that now across there. And like I say, because I want to keep this somewhat lined up with the edge of the field, I'm just going to go to there and no further. But like I said before, it just depends on how the shape of the field that you're creating will determine on how you mess around with the grass or whatever you're removing or planting. So we're just going to go in here now and again continue to remove those grass textures. Unfortunately, because of the view range in the engine, the more you zoom out the less you can see, so you do have to sort of zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out to find what you're, to make sure that you're removing or putting down whatever it is that you're doing. So we'll continue to move along here, remove those grass textures. Like so. Yep. We can continue then to go through the centre here, and if you're working like with this area here, because you're not quite being so careful with the removal of the grass textures, you can just click anywhere there and get rid of that on the zoomed out view, and then zoom back in again to make sure that you've got it all. So, and then we'll just zoom back in again to just tidy up these last little bits at the edge of the field, like so. There we go, so now we've got that all removed as well. Like I said, this can take a little while. You need to be a bit patient with it to make sure that you've got rid of all of the textures that you want to get rid of, and what remains. Gone a little bit too far there by the looks of things. Got to be excited, but that's fine, because what we can do now is put that back into place. We'll just make our brush a little bit smaller, and then what we'll do is we'll go down here, and with grass still selected, we can click on 6, and this gives us fully grown grass ready to cut, so we can just put that back in again where we want it, like so. You have to be a bit careful because you can plant grass on roads anywhere pretty much, so you need to adjust your brush accordingly. Maybe in some cases you might need to change it from the round brush to the from the square brush to the round brush to get it exactly how you want it. But we won't mess about with that too much, because I don't want to make this video massively long. This is just a quick tutorial to show you how to put the fields in and then readdress some of the ground to work for you and with you. So next thing we need to do here is fill in these ditches, and the way that I would recommend to do that, you can use the smoothing tool, which will help somewhat. And if we click on our terrain sculpting mode there, you'll see you've got add, smooth and subtract. If you click the middle mouse button, or whatever you have smooth allocated to, button was on your mouse, you can then click that and drag it around, and it will then smooth out the ground. But really what that is actually for is to smooth off edges. It's not really there to level out ground, because you can see I've still got a dip, and you could move that around as many times as you want, and it might not come up as far as you need it to actually then give you a level ground. So what I would recommend is to use the replace tool, and to do this you can see down here it's actually got replace picking Control R. So you put your cursor on the screen there, which is the red square, somewhere that your ground is at the height that you want it to be over here, or wherever you're leveling out. And then with Control R on your keyboard, if you look in this box here, it says 68. When I actually click Control and R, that will change to the level of the ground over here. Now if I change one of these buttons, and I tend to use my left one to replace, when I actually then click on there, you can see the ground actually coming up to the level that I copied over here, so that it brings the field all to the same height. As you can see there, it's all brought it up to exactly the same height. That way it gives you a much flatter level ground to then continue placing down your field on. Obviously if you want humps and bumps in it, then leave it alone, or adjust it accordingly. We'll just make that a little bit bigger, and we'll just move the mouse around. You need to move the mouse or the painting tool, the square box or round box, around a little bit. You can't just dab it down, it needs to be moved around, because it needs to see that motion for the engine to notice that you're requiring a change. Just do this through the center here. So go. So now I've got that ground up to the same height as the rest of the field. I can then join that together by actually painting down the field terrain texture. To do that, I need to reselect my terrain foliage paint mode, and then actually go down to the foliage layer painting, scroll all the way to the bottom, and you'll see terrain detail. When you click on this, you can then put down your field, you can create your field boundaries on the map. So you need to know basically which one it is that you want to put down, whether it be ploughed, cultivated, seeded, what angle it could be, and you can have various angles from 45 to 90, or in alignment with the rest of it, straight if you like. So you need to just choose these particular numbers, and each one will correspond to a different thing. In this case, 0 is cultivated, 1 is ploughed, 2 is seeded planted land, and 3 is seeded planted potatoes. So it will give you a different texture for each one, which will determine on what you've actually got, or what you're planning to do with that field that you're creating. And then on top of that, you've got 4. So if you were to select 0 and 4, for example, it would be sprayed fertilized, and then 5 would be rotated at a 45-degree angle clockwise, 6 would be rotated at 90 degrees, and 5 and 6 would be rotated at 45 degrees counterclockwise. And that would work for all of them, whether it be cultivated, planted, ploughed, whatever. So we want it to match in with this, so that looks like that's ploughed to me. So we'll leave it on we'll put it onto 1, sorry, and then we can just put that onto the field. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just put that onto the field, but before we do that we need to go back and change our mouse button to add, take it off of replace and put it back to add, and then we can actually change, put it onto the map. And you'll notice that I haven't got the correct angle here, so we need to erase this by clicking on the right mouse button and then change this to the correct angle, which will be 90 degrees, and we do that by clicking on 6. Then when we put it down with the left mouse button, you can see that it's all the same. So we can just add that in. There we go. A little bit of grass there, you see. It highlights it a little bit easier actually once you've put down the other terrain, the field texture. So you will probably find that you'll get that, and it's just easy to go back in and choose grass and then erase it with the left mouse button. We'll re-highlight the terrain detail and click on 6 again so that it follows the 90-degree angle. And you see I've made a mistake because I didn't change it to 1, so we'll change it to 1 and then go in like that. Fortunately the game, or Gaints Editor I should say, doesn't recognise or doesn't keep to the same, it doesn't remember what you had it on last time as far as these numbers, so if you change it to something else and then come back again, it will default back to what it was, which might not be what you need, so you need to change it again. So we'll just come in here and bring this up. Doesn't have to line up exactly right. There we go, we've now added those two fields together. So we'll do the same for this next section. As you can see, we've removed the grass. So we'll go back into our terrain sculpt mode, go back to replace. We don't need to change this number because we want it to be all the same height as all the way along, so we can just go straight in with our left mouse button and bring that terrain up to the height that we require it to be, and there you can see it's moving up nicely. There we go. So now that we've done that, what we can do is go back into our terrain detail. We need to reselect our terrain foliage painting mode, and then in this particular case, because we didn't actually change anything here, it's actually kept it because we changed modes. We didn't actually change the foliage layer, so we can just continue back and repaint, but we need to first obviously change this back to add. We then continue laying our field down we were before. We'll make our brush a bit bigger so that it puts it down at a bit of a greater pace. But like I said before, it's just, you know, being a little bit patient with it and working in a bit of a methodical sort of fashion. Get what you require. There we go. We'll continue to paint this over the rest of the field. So we are joining this last section as well, so it doesn't matter that I've gone over a little bit. In actual facts, I will just do that now. Save switching around from backwards and forwards from mode to mode. So we'll just come in here now and join this up. There we go, perfect. And then we'll go back into our terrain sculpt mode, change this back to replace, and then just drag that through the middle so that it brings that part of the land up to the correct height as well. And as you can see there, because I've changed the height and I painted the field texture onto the ground when it was still down, it's now raised that land up and overwritten what I already put down. So we will need to just fill in that blank. Now sometimes if you do that by saving, closing down the actual Gaints Editor session and then reopening again, it will sometimes recognize the change you've made and then raise or lower the terrain texture or whatever texture you're putting down. But it might not, so it's worth to just go back over it again so that you know you've actually done it. It's actually by moving around, the engine has caught up with the change and it's done it for me now, so I didn't even have to exit, save or anything, it's just done it. As you can see there, that is I've missed a little bit, so we'll just go back in again and I'll just bring my brush down a little bit, and we're still on replace, so I can then just come in and bring that up to the correct level. We'll do the same this end. Okay, there we go. So, and it's caught up again there and filled it in for us, so that's fine. The same this end. Perfect. It's not exactly aligned, but you know, you don't want your fields to be completely square or rectangular. Certain imperfections can add to the realism. But what we need to do now, though, we've got these fields, but they are all actually individual fields. But what we want to do is actually make one big field, and to do this we need to change the actual field numbers and their layouts. So if we click on a by icon here, we can see that this is actually field 21. So what we need to do is actually work out exactly what field number we want this to be. The next field up should be 22, which it is, and that's fine. But what we need to do though is work out the rest of them and then delete them appropriately, and this is where it can be a bit time consuming because it's actually got on this particular map 49 fields. So you need to work out whether the field numbers corresponding across the map, excuse me, are that important to you, because if they are, then what you would need to do is, this is field 22, so you would theoretically want this entire field to be 21, but then obviously all the other fields previous to that, field 20 over here, field 19 and field 18, those are going to be deleted, so it would jump from field 17 up to field 22 or 21 in actual facts, because this is what we're going to create 21 as. So it would jump from 17 to 21 in one big leap, and then obviously it wouldn't all match together. Again, as I say, if this is not important to you and it doesn't matter, then you know, who cares. But you know, if you want to keep it all together so that they all numerically follow each other, then you'll have to rename the rest of them from there on, which can take a bit of time. But we won't do that because it's just going to get too time consuming for this particular video, and like I said, I don't want to make it too long. So we'll just delete the others, and you just do that by clicking on the actual the transform group, and you can see all the actual field by trigger and the field dimensions and the map indicator itself. The map indicator is what shows on the PDA, or the PDA map. So we click on field 20 and we'll just delete that by clicking the delete key on the keyboard. Then go back to our field 21, 19, and we'll get rid of that. on field 18, and we'll get rid of that. And field 17 is over there. So now this field is actually, this large field that we've created by joining all those fields together is field 21. And that's fine, you know, we can leave it at that. It won't match up perfectly, but you know, you can play around with that. Like I say, if you wanted to actually make them all match now, you would have to then rename this to field 20, and then 18, and then this one to 19, this one to 20, and so on and so on and so on down, all the way down to 49, which, you know, can take a bit of time. So that's up to you whether you choose to do that or not. Okay, the next thing we need to do is actually change the boundaries of this field, because if we go into field 21 and we go into field dimensions, you can see that the corners don't actually match up to the entire field. You've got various different ones when you open up the transform groups. So it's actually showing the corners of the field. Corner 1 start there, and then corner 2 over here, and corner 3 over here. But we actually want it to register this entire field as one field, and we can do that by leaving these two where they are, field 2 and corner 1 and I'm getting my words all mumbled up. Corner 2 and corner 3, we can leave those where they are and put corner 1. We can now adjust that and bring that down to here, like so, and that then shows this as the entire field. That's that. So we've got all of our corners laid out. Oh, I see. Corner 1 is actually the main transform group. We need to watch for that. So we will actually need to adjust the others, but that's fine. If we've moved the main one down to the corner there, so we'll just grab the next one and move it back up into the corner here. And then number 3 we'll do the same with over to here, so that it lines up with the edge of the field. There we go, that's better. Perfect. And there we go, so that's that. Now there are a couple of other things that you need to do, and I tend to find this a little bit of a tricky situation, because when you actually, if we close down the terrain editing and we'll go into our user attributes, when we click on field 21, which is our newly created large field here, you'll see that the field area is 1.45 hectares. Well, that was for this field here, not all of them. So it's a little bit of sort of rough calculations really. I did read somewhere that there was actually a way of calculating the size of this field specifically, but it's a little bit beyond what I want to go with, so I tend to just guess it. You know, you've got 4 fields of similar size, so you can just join them all together really. So if we open up our calculator, and we'll just say it's 1.45 times 4, so it's now 5.8 hectares in size. Whether that's accurate or not, I'm not sure, but you know, it's not overly important unless you want it to be, and then you'll need to work it out specifically, but that's not really my area there. I'm not really into that. And again, with your field price, you can set that to whatever you want it to be. So if it was that for 1, you can then change that accordingly. So if we say it's that price times 4, because we've now got 4 of them, it's going to be that, which is, you know, an expensive field. But you know, again, for that size of field, that's not a bad price actually. So yeah, that is how you join 4 fields together and make one large field, and then set up your dimensions and change your attributes to match the size of the field. And then perhaps you might want to move the map indicator and the field by icon to somewhere more appropriate so that it shows up on the PDA more relevantly. So we can move the map indicator if we want to, and if we zoom back in again, you can see that that's just a transform group that shows where that field is. So we can perhaps maybe move that into the middle of the field, like so, and that will then work for that field. And we can perhaps maybe move our field by trigger so it's more centralized, if you so choose, like so. There we go. We've now changed 4 separate fields into one large field, which is cultivated. And then if you wanted to put that into the game, which I might actually do just to show that it does show up, but we'll see. And you can now go in, cultivate this, plant it, seed it, whatever, and then it's ready to go. So yeah, okay, there we go. Thanks very much for watching. Perhaps maybe I'll put it into the game. I'm not sure yet. If I do, I do, and if not, then I obviously didn't. Okay, thanks very much.